Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're playing more of the +1 seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which whenever we play a unit, we will also spawn a 1-power copy of that unit, giving us a bunch of extra copies of some of the strongest cards in our deck. Today we're going to be playing a deck that focuses on dealing a lot of damage, and benefiting from our own cards being damaged as well. So let's go give it a look. So today we'll be playing a Skellige Ursine Ritual self-damage deck that uses cards that either get boosted or heal themselves when they get damaged, like Olaf, as well as the Vildkaarl, which will transform into the Champion of Svalblod, increasing its power significantly. Then we'll also use Artis, which will be a way of causing additional damage to both ourselves and our opponent, but will benefit from that self-damage oftentimes, whereas our opponent very much will not. Then other than that, we have some damaging engines like Herkja, the Craite Longship, the Brokvar Hunters, and even the Drummond Berserker. Then we also have Dagur, who will get boosted whenever we do that damage, making him potentially our biggest source of points. And then Wild Boar the Sea to help set him up, because since our opponent is going to spawn in a bunch of 1-power units, Wild Boar the Sea has tons of targets. Then other than that, basically everything else is either a source of damage or something that gets boosted or healed when we deal damage, either to our units or our opponent's units. So now I'll flip through the deck to show you what else we have. And Living Armor is great because since its power is based on its armor, that 1-power copy that gets spawned in gets set back up to 10 power, since its armor still starts at 10. Then Colossal Ifrit is another source of damage. And the Bearwisher Mentor is one of our big finishers, assuming that our opponent has a lot of damage units, and we might as well. And if we have played Artis, the Tuirseach Axeman becomes a very interesting option, because unless our opponent is immediately boosting the units that they play, once Artis is down, that means the Tuirseach Axeman can destroy anything else that our opponent plays. So there's a look at the deck, and like I said, it is a mixture of dealing damage to our opponents and dealing damage to ourselves, and benefiting when we do that in both cases. So let's go see it in action. Alright, so going up against Nilfgaard here, and we'll go first. Okay, so we can load up with some preemptive damage with things like the Craite Longship, Herkja, and even the Brokvar Hunter, which could be helpful to set up a Dagur Two Blades. We'd probably like to save him for round 3 though, so we're going to need to play some of this stuff in round 1. Svalblod Fanatic we'd really prefer to only be playing through Artis, so I think, well, maybe we stick with this. Let's start with the Craite Longship. Okay, they're going to use their leader ability in round 1. Okay, so that locks down our Ursine Ritual. Not really sure we had intentions of using it right off the bat. Okay, so early indication is Assimilate. And so I think what we do here is we either go with the Brokvar Hunter or with Herkja and try to get a little more damage to ideally take out at least this 1-power Longship that they created. I think we go with the Brokvar Hunter, because that way, although it is going to get hit, at least the initial one is, we have very targeted damage to take this one out. We also love to take out these Brothans, otherwise they're going to get fairly big. Okay, then it's a Cantarella. Okay, so they are trying to be as trolly as possible. Well, Svalblod Fanatic is one of our worst cards. One that gets spawned in at 1 power, though, is immediately going to transform, and actually, our Craite Longships damage the other one, so that it also transforms immediately. So I think here we either go Herkja for even more damage, although we might want to save that for round 3 when we're planning to use Dagur, because that's another great way to set him up. So our alternative might be to go with an Craite Warcrier here. That way it can generate a little bit of points over time, since they do have a damaged unit. Okay, then it's Bribery, so yeah, it's looking a lot like an Assimilate deck here. And the Drummond Berserker is not a bad card. Once again, with the damage we have from our Longship, it's going to mean that they immediately transform, so they're loading up on these Bear Abominations now. And I'm thinking we might need a little bit more of a burst of points here if we're going to take the round 1 win. I think our finisher for round 1 might be the Tuirseach Veteran, but maybe we use Royal Decree here to get either Olaf for the living armor. Olaf is worth more points, although we should have used our Brokvar Hunter damage before we played Olaf if we were going to go that route. Also, we are just not going to have enough time for this damage now because I was pokey. Okay, then it's Lambert. Oh, well, okay. Now you're going to punish us even more for not having used those order abilities, so shame on me. But now we go Tuirseach Veteran, and I would like for this to be the final card we play in this round. We would actually like if they damaged us a little bit more, so that we could have gotten the Berserk to trigger on this one as well. So now they're going with Duchess's Informant, and it seems like they're going for the Longship, which, I mean, if we don't play any more cards in this round, isn't going to be a very big problem for us. We do still have a lead. It's not a huge lead, but these Warcriers will continue to get boosted, so that's not bad. So we're hoping that it will take them more than one card if they do want to catch up to us, although they may be able to manage to catch up with just one. So it's a Duchess's Informants, and they'll go with a Tuirseach Veteran. And unfortunately, yes, we do have enough damage to trigger that second Berserk, and that is perhaps the difference maker there, so they do take the round 1 win. Okay, so they played one more card than us in round 1, and so I'm expecting them to try pass here in round 2, although it's not out of the question that they could try to push and bleed us a bit. We have some solid cards here. We saved some big ones, like Dagur, of course, and Wild Boar the Sea, as well as Olaf and Herkja, Colossal Ifrit as well. Even Bearwitcher Mentor is one of our best finishers, so Craite Longship and Drummond Berserkers are good setup cards, but they're probably the ones we would sacrifice. So we'd like to have them in round 3, but in case they do push in round 2, I suppose we'll hold on to them just in case, because they do play the Magni Division here. In which case, pacing-wise, the Longship is not fast enough. The Drummond Berserker is, so we could pass them with playing just this card, which means if this was just a little test to see if they could bleed out one of our better cards, we could still pass that test with you, but not with you. So I think we go this route. Because, of course, this one will automatically transform into that Bear Abomination, whereas this one will deal a little bit of damage before it transforms. Yeah, they are still going to play a little bit more. Now, if they're going to deal a little bit of damage, then of course it may just transform this Berserker. Granted, it all hit that Bear Abomination instead. So if we're expecting this round to go longer, then Craite Longship is the answer. If we're looking for an immediate point slam, then, well, we actually don't have a great solution. I think we might need to go Longship now. And at least it is enough that if they pass here, we may still have the lead. What with their damage and boosting that's happening automatically now, it may be a little tough to say, but going with their defender, they probably would not have done that if they didn't intend to push pretty hard here. I'm thinking, especially since they have a 1-power Alba Pikeman, that looks a lot like an opportunity for a Colossal Ifrit, so I think we go with that. It is a pretty big card to play, but as we've seen, they're playing pretty big cards, so I think it does warrant that we get a little more aggressive here. And it's more Alba Pikemen now. Unfortunately, it did get rid of one of the Longships and one of the Colossal Ifrits, and so we may be looking at Herkja territory now. Of course, it is one of the cards that we would have liked to have saved to go along with Dagur. Same could be said for many of the things we played in round 2, but hey, that's what they're trying to do. Trying to bleed out our good cards. Could have made the case for using Herkja's order ability. And they have damage, they have boosting. Herkja will have 2 damage at the end of this turn, which is enough to tie, but not win round 2, so unfortunately, that does mean we need to play something here. I think it's probably going to be the Bearwitcher Mentor. It is a very nice finisher, but I don't think we want to mess with any of our Dagur combos, so let's go this route. And I suppose, why not? Might as well at this point. Okay, so we'll win round 2 when we'll be on even cards for round 3. Okay, and things just got very interesting because we drew into Artis, which could fundamentally change how round 3 goes, so I think we might roll with that, in which case, having a Tuirseach Axeman is not a bad idea. If every unit that they play is going to get its power cut in half, then that's a great setup for this, so we might stick with this. We also drew into a Bear Witcher Mentor, which could be another great finisher for us, so I like the looks of this. And I think what we'll do is we will lead off with Artis. And we'll get out a Svalblod Fanatic, with which, when we play it, it will immediately get damaged enough, both copies of it, damaged enough to transform. Oh, actually, Artis is such that, okay, it does transform and then get damaged, unfortunately. Okay, then Glynis. That is obviously a big card, and therefore a card that we would very much like to destroy with a Tuirseach Axeman. So let's get rid of one of them here. And we are definitely going to want to get Dagur down here as quickly as possible now. Okay, it's Ox. They're going to lock one of those Artis's eyes. Oh no, both Artis's. That means that they must have Serret in their hand. So that'll give them some damage. Gives us some insight as to what to expect. But fortunately, after locking the Artis's, that means that, well, we have a safer Dagur play. We also just don't have as much in the way of ways to apply the damage to set up Dagur, because we burned through most of that in round 2. Okay, then it's Artorias Vigo, with which we'll get more Alba Pikemen out here, which is a little problematic. We don't want that to take out Dagur. Thankfully, they did not. And because we've used basically all of our damage here outside of Wild Boar the Sea, it is largely a question of how long do we dare to leave these Dagurs unboosted when we know that they're at risk of taking damage from these pikemen, because we could go with an early Wild Boar the Sea to get them back into the safe zone with those boosts, but of course it's not as effective when there aren't as many units out there. So we'll take it a little bit risky here and go with Olaf, which is the best plan in the ideal scenario. So we're taking a high-risk, high-reward approach. Lacerates. Oh, they go for the Olaf row. And we do lose the Dagur as well. Okay, that does hurt. So now what we do is we're going to use our Ursine ritual on this Olaf. And basically just all charges. Then, before we activate that ability, let's use the Bear Witcher Mentor here to get boosted based on how many damage units are out there. Then we could activate Olaf, although we might deliberately wait a little bit before doing so in case we happen to take some random damage from these Alba Pikemen. We do know that they have some damage in their hand remaining with Serret, but remember that Serret only has 2 damage, so what are the chances they target Olaf with Serret and get Alba Pikemen to hit Olaf? Pretty unlikely, right? I mean, if one of them hits, or if just Serret hits Olaf, then it does make Olaf stronger. They do go for it. Please don't hit him. Okay, the pikeman did not hit him, which means, yes, he is getting boosted. So that's sweet. Let's use that now. Then we go with Wild Boar the Sea, which, hey, at least we have one Dagur to get boosted from it. And fortunately, we have a highly boosted Dagur in the melee row, and then our other 2 boosted units are in the range row. So if this last card is an Earden, it's not going to be that effective. No, it's Imperial Diplomacy. So, I mean, sure, it's going to give Glynis a bit of a boost, but I suppose the Artorias Vigos as well. That's still nowhere near enough, I have to imagine. Even with the Svalblod Fanatic, which is not a bad play, but we will still take the convincing win. Alright, so going against monsters here, and they'll go first. Okay, so we have a couple of point slams with Living Armor and Olaf. Oh, and add Bear Witcher Mentor to that list as well. We have some decent damage with the Craite Longship, Colossal Ifrit, Brokvar Hunter, and then a finishing source of damage with Wild Boar the Sea. Don't think we want Svalblod Fanatic when we can use Artis to get one. Oneiromancy is obviously amazing. Tuirseach Axeman works really well with Artis. I think we might stick with this here. Okay, they're going with a Cave Troll in the melee row, then using their stratagem. And reading between the lines here a bit, what with them using the Unseen Elder as their character and using Blood Scent as their ability, I'm guessing that means this is probably a vampire deck, and the card they're probably trying to hide behind that defender is an Unseen Elder, in which case we could damage the first one that they play if we have an Craite Longship down there, and then maybe on our next turn, we use Colossal Ifrit to take out the 1-power copy that gets spawned in. That's looking like it might be the best option. Although Artis could work well, I think we want to save that for round 3, because assuming they are playing vampires, they likely have Regis Reborn, and Artis is going to be a great way to weaken that. Oh, Browner is a little unexpected. You wonder if they were a little concerned about us dealing too much damage to whatever they were trying to hide behind these cave trolls. However, we could use Oneiromancy to get more longships, and I think that might even be the play here. We would love to completely remove these drowners by going with a Colossal Ifrit on that previous turn, but if we did that, then that meant they would have been on cooldown when they're playing whatever their big card is that they're trying to hide behind these guys, because they definitely did not set up these cave trolls just to protect drowners. Okay, it's, ooh, an operator. Guessing it's going to be a fletter. Yep. One thing that's been a little odd, however, is that they have not done any bleeding yet, which means they didn't boost his fletter on their previous turn, and if they do have Regis Reborn, then he hasn't been gaining base power. And so if they haven't been doing that, then that might be a sign that they just don't have him, in which case Artis could be a strong play in round 1. Otherwise, now that they have units in this range row where they are not protected by the cave troll, we could take the more conservative, lower risk approach and use the Brokvar Hunter. I mean, ideally, we would get rid of this flutter. I think that's pretty unlikely that they are not going to find some way to boost it on their next turn, but we'll see. It's another flutter. So yeah, they're going flutter overload here. Now they use their leader ability for some bleed. So they wanted to wait until they had more flutters out there to get maximum value out of that leader ability charge. So you could potentially make the case for keeping this round short, because these flutters are going to get pretty big the longer they stay out here, and we haven't committed anything super big in this round, so it's not the end of the world if we cut this one relatively short. Technically speaking, we could have used Living Armor to retake the lead, but I think it's better to save that. Okay, so they did play one more card than us in round 1. That means they may just play 2 throwaway cards here, or, given how round 1 was very short, they may try to push and go for the 2-0 win. We drew into several strong cards here, of course. Oneiromancy round 2, Vildkaarl, and Dagur, which are all huge. Honestly, the biggest problem might be if they do just use 1 or 2 throwaway cards, then we don't have too many things that we are willing to sacrifice, so I think we might get rid of you. That's a better middle ground card with the Berserker, so I like that better. Okay, it's the Neckarat, and although it is just a 5 provision cost card, it is pretty fundamental to Vampire's decks because it is the best card for dishing out frequent bleeds. So I think that is a sign that they're looking to turn this into a longer round, in which case I think we take a little bit of a risk here by playing one of our somewhat big cards and using Oneiromancy to get it, that being Herkja. Because it's similar to the Drummond Berserker, just that the Drummond Berserker only has 1 random damage, since the one that gets spawned in at 1 power is going to immediately convert. So this gives us a higher probability of destroying that Neckarat. Thank you, Herkja. Also, she has Veil, which means if they wanted to use Bleed, it's not going to work here. Okay, then it's Wispus Tribute. And so, yup, a way to get rid of, well, the weaker Herkja. Okay, fair enough. It was not enough damage to get rid of the stronger one. So we could go with the Colossal Ifrit in the melee row and wipe out both of these Neckarats. That is tempting. It is, of course, a strong card that we would perhaps prefer not to commit just yet, but if we are going to use it, we want to play it early, so I guess we'll go for it. It's taking these guys out does definitely slow down their bleeding quite a bit. Okay, and they'll go with the Drowner to move Herkja, and she is row locked, to the melee row. However, she does still deal 1 damage at the end of our turn here. We just can't use that order ability now, so we won't ever get that 3 damage burst. But they have played 2 rounds of Drowners now, which means they don't have a way of moving Dagur, I wouldn't think. So that is an option here, but let's not commit to that just yet. We don't need to at this stage. Let's continue to ease into things a little bit by going with Drummond Berserker first. And that gives us a nice mixture of having a little more damage to get rid of one of their Drowners, which was an engine, and just point slamming with this Bear Abomination. Okay, so they'll pass. So that means we will win round 2 and do so with 1 card advantage, and that is why it was key that we did not get carried away and use Dagur, because he was not necessary in this case. Okay, so we draw into a couple of Tuirseach Veterans, which are decent mid-round cards, because the 1 power copy that gets spawned in will automatically trigger that Berserk 3, heal itself back up to an 8. So this might be about as good as it's going to get, because we did play some of our decent cards in round 2 there. So I think we stick with what we have. And the question now becomes, what do we want to lead off with? Because we did use all of our longships in round 1 and Herkja in round 2, so we don't have any great preemptive sources of damage. Unless you want to include Artis in that list, which might be worth doing. We do have some cards that benefit from being damaged by Artis, but we have some that do not, like Living Armor and Dagur. So maybe we actually start a little bit with our Point Slam cards, strange as that might seem. And just make sure we get them down before we play Artis. And they'll just forfeit. So we'll take the win, likely because Living Armor is another card that circumvents bleed damage. So there's a look at the Skellige damage deck for the new +1 seasonal event. If you liked the video, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and leave a comment down below to let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions you'd like us to experiment with next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.